So, in terms of history, HTS comes out of an Al Qaeda linked group, but one that broke away from Al Qaeda, one that actually fought against Al Qaeda, and fought against other extremist groups in Syria. So, the group itself has gone through a really intriguing, I won't say transformation in that they suddenly saw the light or something, okay? But you for example, have a reality where HTS um, got into Aleppo, into Halab. Okay, they took a bunch of Alawi prisoners. Okay, who were conscripts. So the Alawis, represented the bedrock of or the most elite part of the Syrian regime, the Assad Syrian regime, both under Hafiz al-Assad and his son Bashar al-Assad. So had HTS executed all of these captured military conscripts in Halab, in Aleppo, then I think that would have been a signal to the Alawi community that you better fight till the death. They didn't. They released them, and you've seen that kind of approach and pragmatism on the side of HTS in different parts of not just the movements over the past week, but over the last few years. And I think that's interesting, and I think that represents hopefully an opportunity for forces inside of Syria and outside of Syria to encourage a rethink within the group even further. Of course, the, they are what they are. They came out of that particular ideological frame, but they have come quite a long way, and they will have a lot to contend with in Syria going forward. They're going to have all of these Syrians that they weren't governing before, that they weren't ruling over. It's not Syria is not Idlib, okay, which is where they were actually in charge. Syria is a lot larger than that. It's going to be very interesting to see how they manage in Damascus. Controlling Damascus, especially Damascus has a very strong and very respected religious establishment that are not HDS. Okay, how are they going to engage with that? It's there are reasons to have room for optimism in this regard. If Keir Starmer or any politician had said today or yesterday, we're going to remove them, I would have frankly found that very concerning. The prescriptions of groups of any nature should not be a process that begins and finishes or is rescinded at the drop of a hat. Otherwise, it's not really a process. They're not really well thought out. Had he withdrawn the prescription immediately, then I would have regarded that as evidence of the process itself being flawed tremendously. So, frankly, I'm not surprised that he has been cautious in terms of saying this. I think that there have been signals, though, that they are going to review, and I think the review is in order. And I suspect that the review is probably going to be conditional of some in some regard, because it's going to be very difficult to assume that the HTS that was prescribed quite some years ago is the same one that exists today. But I think that it should be a process that doesn't happen overnight. And it won't be just the Britain. It won't just be the UK that has this issue. By the way, I think in the European Union you'll have the same. Um, and I think that people will recognize that if you want to engage with a new Syria, then you're going to have that review process. And it shouldn't be done willy nilly. And there should be a conversation with the new authorities in Syria that, look, we want to do this and we want to do that, but you need to help us. You need to be able to show that you've come to grips with this, come to terms with that. And I think that there's room for that right now. I think that there's an opportunity here to build a constructive relationship with the new authorities in Syria, but only if we can show that we've got credibility on the ground. And one major issue over the last few days is that Israel has invaded yet more Syrian territory, occupied yet more Syrian territory from the Golan, bombed quite a few Syrian positions, not just military ones in terms of taking out the navy and the air force, but also other areas, other targets in the country. They claim for military purposes, but this is completely unacceptable. and it should have been stated as completely unacceptable by the UK from the get-go that this Israel has no business invading Syrian territory, has no business occupying new positions further north in the Golan. So we've got to be very, very clear, I think, from London in order to at least maintain that social capital, um, not just on the ground in Syria, but frankly, more widely speaking, on international law. So I think that generally speaking, there are good signs going forward. Okay, there are so many reasons that people will want to bring up in order to be very pessimistic about how everything is working out. Okay, but look at the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground is that it's been, at least over the past week, the amount of bloodshed has been terribly minimal considering how things could have gone. Okay, um, you have external actors who are also not looking to create more instability in the country. On the contrary, Bashar al-Assad was the source of an incredible amount of instability, and eventually even his allies thought that he was a liability. Okay, so there's already been some sort of truce that was negotiated up in the north between a Kurdish group, opposite, well, not part of the regime technically, um, but also with another fighting force up in the north. So I think that there are a lot of forces inside and outside of the country that are not looking to create yet more conflict. On the contrary, that this is, as one person told me, this is the end of the beginning, and there should be. I think there's a lot of will on the ground um, to start something new. Of course, it can go pear shaped. Okay, people shouldn't assume that it can't. People shouldn't be naive about that. But I don't think Syrians are naive about that either, and I don't think that's what they want. Okay, I don't think that that's what they're trying to do. I think that people in the UK will turn around and say, "Oh, well, look what happened here and there," and say, who saw this stuff probably a lot closer than you? Syrians, and they saw the pain and the suffering of the past decade much better than any of us in London. Okay, or in the West more generally. That's not what they're looking for. I think that they're looking to close the book on a chapter of what was certainly the most authoritarian Arab regime of my lifetime, and try to start something new. And I think that the outside world should be doing all it can in order to help that along in a constructive fashion.